We love to celebrate the wins, the moments of glitz and glamour, the trophies, the validation. But what we rarely talk about is what comes before it: the doubt, the failure, the moments that make you question yourself if it was ever worth it. My guest today isn't just a competitor. He's a friend of mine, someone I've known for years. After competing twice, Eric Dupree just won his first natural bodybuilding competition and earned his pro card. But this story isn't just about winning. It's about what it takes to come back after falling short for the first time. Now, before we talk about that, the win, I want to talk about the first time you competed, because the first time you lost.
Yeah.
Can you take me back to that moment? What did it feel like to stand on stage, have everyone looking at you, and hear someone else's name called instead of yours?
Yeah. Well, my first time I actually lost twice.
Twice.
So I did my first show in 2023. And I did back-to-back shows because they were so close together. It just made sense to get as much out of it that I could since I was already so lean and did all this prep. The first show I did was an NPC show, which means it's non-natural. So there was athletes on performance-enhancing drugs and cycles and all these different things. And the second show was an all-natural show. So all-natural athletes like myself. I don't take any drugs or anything like that. So I didn't really know what to expect. The only reason I had started prep for a bodybuilding competition anyways because I had always had an asphyxiation with working out for years at least. And I'm very goal driven. So I needed a goal to hit. I wanted to do a competition before I turned 30. So I just committed to it when I turned 29. I said, we're going to start prep now and I'll do a show this year before I turn 30. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have any expectations for myself. So that first show, I finished fifth in my class and second in novice. Novice is anyone who hasn't won a show or first time, competitors or anything like that. And I was fine with that because I was the only natural athlete in my group. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what peak week was like. I didn't know what show day prep was like. I didn't know what backstage was like. I didn't have any expectations for myself. I just wanted to see if I could even get there and do it. The next show was a natural show 2 weeks later. And that one hit me a little bit differently because after actually doing well the first show, being an only natural athlete, part of me thought I could just walk into a natural show and be the man, right? I just did the show against enhanced athletes. I did it well. Okay, let's go to a natural show and I'll be the man because I proved to myself I can do this now. And now I know what show day's like. Now I know what peak week's like. Now I know what to expect. I'm more prepared. I can go in here and kind of walk away with this fairly easily. And I finished second overall and second in novice. So I came in second both times. And I really enjoy winning, but I really, really hate losing. I think it's a big hit to the ego. That I'm real big on my ego and my pride. You know, we've talked about it quite a bit. It's something you have to control, but coming second was almost worse than finishing like fifth or something like that. Because if I would have finished first, awesome. I'm the man. I got it done. That's great. If I would have finished fourth or fifth, it's like, hey, maybe bodybuilding is just not for me, but I think it's cool that I had this goal and it's not something I meant for, but this was a really cool experience. Coming in second, it's like, no, you're good enough to do this. You just didn't work hard enough this time, or you weren't good enough against these people. And bodybuilding is a tough sport because it's so subjective. You have 3 or 4 judges sitting in front of you and they're just judging, how strict you've been on your diet, how good your muscles look, how aesthetic you look. And they're judging you when you've worked so hard for these last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, however long your prep is. And when you get up there and they tell you you're not good enough, even though you've worked so hard these last 8 months, that's a big hit to the ego. Or, hey, you look good, just not good enough today. And so when I placed second both times, it was very frustrating because I had set these very high standards for myself after still not having much experience, but that's just the kind of person I am. If I do something, I expect to win because I really don't like how I feel when I lose. I'm hyper competitive in that way. So it was a big blow to the ego, and I honestly didn't know if I was ever going to compete again. But I mean, a year and a half later, here we are. So I think your question was, how did it feel when I lost? felt like a punch to the gut. It felt like a punch to the ego. And it really took me some time to get over that and be able to even build up the courage to get on stage and do it again.
Yeah, I heard you. I mean, that's interesting. All the thoughts that go through your brain when you're competing, and then when you lost. And I heard you mention this a couple times, right? You said maybe, or am I good enough for this, or maybe I'm not good enough for this. What did you tell yourself, or what kind of thoughts went through your head? Did you honestly think like, hey, I got here? I mean, placing second time your first time out is impressive, right?
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
impressive. But what were those thoughts of like of maybe I'm not good enough for this?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's funny. I've always been like this where I'm the kind of person who's always been very good very quickly at things and very successful. So like this is not to I'm not trying to toot my own horn. This is kind of just the person I am. When I pick to do something, I get good at it and I practice it really hard and I kind of become obsessed with it almost. I get successful at it and then I move on to the next thing in life, right? And if I'm not good at something right away or I'm not the best at it right away, I almost shut down and don't even want to do it anymore. I was good at sports my whole life growing up. Every sport I played, I excelled at, except baseball. I played one season of baseball. I didn't get it right away. I wasn't the best at it. I felt like one of the, not as great players on the team. This is when I was probably 10 or 11, but I could tell I wasn't as good as everybody else for that season. And I never played baseball again because I wasn't successful at it right away. So this kind of gave me that same thing. Like, hey, you finished second. Maybe you're just not good enough. Maybe you don't work hard enough to be successful at this. Maybe you can't be as disciplined as everybody thinks you are to be successful at this. And so it's really bodybuilding's, I think, a lot more mental than physical in a lot of ways, because it's a constant battle mentally on top of all the physical things that you have to go through to get on stage.
Why? So I mean, that's interesting because you say you're competitive. You like to be number one. You
Yeah.
like to do all these things. But for some reason, when it gets really, really harder, you don't get excel as quickly or come in first place like you thought you would. Like, hey, I'm just gonna walk away from this.
Yeah. Find something else to compete at.
Where do you think, because you are a competitor, where do you think those thoughts come from? Or
I don't know. I think it's because growing up, especially in sports and everything, I was always undersized. So, but I knew if like everything that I had done in life told me if you work really hard, it doesn't matter how big you are, how strong you are, how fast you are, you can be successful and be good at it. That's kind of how it's always been. And so when I feel like I've worked really hard at something like the bodybuilding thing, right? I know I put in the most amount of work I could in 7 or 8 months. And I was really proud of what I brought on stage and I was still told I wasn't good enough. And it was just a huge hit to the ego, which I wasn't. A lot of the times in life, especially growing up, when I would quit something, I wasn't emotionally strong enough to deal with that bruise to the ego. So instead of dealing with it and saying, okay, just let's work a little bit harder next time. Let's change how we approach it. Let's find a way to be successful at this. I was like, no, my ego's bruised. Let me just find something else to get good at and I'll go, show off over there instead of being second fiddle at something I may just have to work a little bit harder at to be successful at. It's really just ego and how I handle my emotions regarding, coming in second or feeling my ego get bruised or something like that.
got it.
Yeah.
So talking about ego, you had a chance to, or you had a choice to quit or try again, and you chose to go back.
Mm-hmm.
What did that take for you mentally to go back, and how do you think your ego was incorporated inside of that?
It's funny. The first time I did it was just to prove to myself that I could do it. This time around, when I started prep, it was because I needed it. I was kind of at a rock bottom point mentally and emotionally in my life, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit, but I felt like I needed, I don't know, even know how else to word it other than like a lifeline. Like I needed something I could hold on to in life because anytime you're going through any mental or emotional or spiritual healing is very nonlinear. right? You can be doing everything right, the journaling, the therapy, the everything, reading the right books, listening to the right podcasts, and there's still days where you feel great, and there's days where you feel like garbage, even though you're doing all the right things. It's very up and down, right? Um, Bodybuilding's not so much like that. Now, you might not come in first, but if you follow the workouts and you follow the diet, you will get results good enough to be on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, emotional and mental healing is like English class. Like there's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you interpret it is how you interpret it, and you kind of go through it like that. Bodybuilding is like math. X plus X equals X.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had no control as I was going through my mental and emotional healing. So I needed control of something, and I could control my diet and my workouts and how regimented I am physically. And so I only started this prep because I felt like I needed something to hold on to and something to kind of to get through what I was going through.
Yeah, I heard you mention something interesting about control, right? Control. It can be a very detrimental thing
For sure.
to us. But you said you needed something to where you felt like you had control over something.
Yeah.
So at that time in your life, you felt like you didn't have control over anything else, and this was the only thing you had control over.
100%.
And having control over that, or having something like you said to hold on to, what did that do for you?
It kept me afloat. When you don't have control, it almost feels like you're drowning, right? Because if someone's drowning, they can't grab onto anything. They can't control the waves that are coming over them. They can't control, how they swim. They can't control any of it. But if you grab a life raft, you don't feel like you're drowning anymore. You're still in the water. You're still going through it, but you don't feel like you're drowning. And you can start to kind of pick yourself up out of that, which is such a good analogy I just came up with on the spot. That's really good. Because that's what it felt like. Like bodybuilding and this prep was my life raft to kind of make it through what I was going through. Because when I felt like I didn't have any control mentally or emotionally or spiritually, my relationships were suffering, my work was suffering, my mental health in general. So if I said, okay, I can't really control a lot, but I have this one thing that I know, I can just kind of focus on and kind of keep me pushing to get to the next day. I can get out of this. And that's what happened.
So bodybuilding for you, or was bodybuilding for you a template to get your life back on track?
Yeah. Because it just reminded me, hey, if you do the work consistently and don't stop over a long enough period of time, you're going to be okay. Or you're going to be successful, or you're going to be good enough to get on stage. And that goes the same with anything you're going through in life, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. If you just continue to do the work every day, in the end, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to get on stage. You're going to be able to wake up happy. You're going to be able to find God, whatever it is that you're going through or trying to get to the end of. If you just do the work consistently every day, those small wins from each day, the day you didn't cheat on your diet, or the day you decided to read your 10 pages when you didn't want to, or the day you decided to get all your steps in when you didn't feel like it, those days add up in the end. And it was just a really good reminder that, hey, if you don't stop, you can literally do anything. It just over a long enough period of time, you're going to get there.
Consistency will bring you results
every time.
Nothing whack has ever come from consistency.
No, but that's good and bad. So consistently doing something bad, of
course,
is going to, will lead to something very bad happening in the end. So it goes both ways. So I think it's just smart or ideal for people to identify the small habits of good consistency that they can stack every day to become the person they want to be. That's why, like, during my bodybuilding prep, I started writing out every day. Not that my goal was to get a pro card. It was. I thought it'd be really cool. And I'm really into, we talk about a bit about manifestation and seeing your goals and things like that, right? But instead of writing down, I want to win a pro card, I want to win a pro card in my journal every day, I would write down the habits of someone who could win a pro card would do.
I like that. That's dope.
So not I want to win a pro card. It's, I don't want to cheat on my diet because someone who could win a pro card wouldn't cheat on their diet. Or I want to, whatever it may be, writing down the daily habits that the person you want to be does reminds you what you need to be doing every day to be that person.
Give me 2 that you wrote down.
One is not cheating on my diet because
What exactly did it sound like? I want to know exactly what it sounded
like what I wrote in my journal.
Yeah.
I will not cheat on my diet because someone who cheats on their diet doesn't win their pro card. Or I will try my hardest during the workout because someone who has their pro card works out hard every day. Things like that.
That's a great affirmation. I mean, that's a perfect example of what affirmations look like because of how specific and how detailed it was.
Yeah. And it just reminds me like, hey, that person you want to be, this is what they do every day, even when they don't feel like it.
Yeah, that's a gem.
Yeah.
That's a gem.
And some days it sucks, but it was just easier for me to focus on, because let's say I write down every day, I want to win my pro card. I want to win my pro card. I want to win my pro card. And then I get up on stage and I came in second again or third or whatever it was, and I didn't win my pro card. Then it feels like all of it was for nothing. Okay. But if I did what I did and wrote down, I want to be someone who doesn't skip their meal or doesn't skip their diet because that's not what the person I want to be does, or workouts or whatever it is that I had said a little bit ago. If I got to the end and I wouldn't have won, it wouldn't have hurt as bad because I still became the person I wanted to be. I just didn't get the result that I was expecting. But I'm still someone who could win a pro card because I built these habits, and I know these habits are someone who wins pro cards.
What do you think those habits or building those habits do for you outside of bodybuilding?
I think they're just a constant reminder, because when I was going through it, when you're doing bodybuilding prep, you see your body change over time. People on the outside see it more so than I see it myself, because it's hard to see changes in yourself every day. But I'm tracking my weight every day. I can, I'm doing progress pictures every week. I can see the changes in my body slowly. And that was just a constant reminder that, hey, if you do the little things, not just in bodybuilding, but that your therapist tells you to do, or you do the little things every day at work that are going to make you successful, these things will add up and they do create change inside of you or outside of you. But the work every day does matter, because if you're on your diet 5 days a week and then 2 days a week you eat as bad as someone can eat, you're never going to see that progress the same way as someone who sticks to what they need to do 7 days a week. So it's just small wins every day. If you tell yourself at work you're going to make 10 sales calls today, and every day you only make 5 to 7, you're not going to see the same results as if you were making 10 every day.
Right.
So I think it's just that constant reminder of, hey, the little things do add up, not just in bodybuilding, but in life.
The ones are in the details.
Every day.
In the details. What's harder, failing the first time or knowing you could fail again competing for the second time? And I don't know if people really understand that if you don't compete, that's hard, because there's a lot of, I'm sure there was fear, like, hey,
yeah,
No,
the second time for sure, because like I had said, the first couple shows, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't have super high expectations. The second show I had a little bit higher expectations because I had just done it, but I was in prep for 7 months and I didn't know what it was going to look like in the end. I didn't have any real expectations because I didn't think I was a bodybuilder. I was someone who was doing a bodybuilding competition. So the second time, I'm like, okay, I've done 2 bodybuilding shows. I've kept my body in better shape this time before I start prep. I know exactly what foods to eat. I know all the hacks. I know all the tricks. And not only that, but the first couple shows I finished second. So now my expectation is that I have to do better this time. So that's added pressure. That's added expectations. So the fear of failing is much bigger. You fail the first time when you're not expecting to win. It is what it is. You fail the next time when you're expecting to win. It hurts a little bit different. So, I feel like what was just something I stumbled into as far as being successful at it was now something that was expected of me. Like I was expected to place well this time because I had been through this. I know all the tips and tricks. I've done all the things. I don't have any distractions. It's literally just me versus me. So if I can't be good at it this time, then what am I even doing?
Don't even show up again.
Don't even show up again.
Don't even show up.
Don't even show up.
What were you telling yourself, in the weeks leading up to this most recent competition to win? Were you fighting doubt every day?
Every day. I still do. I still don't feel like, part of me still don't feel like I deserve the win because I saw how, when you're backstage, you see how good everybody looks. They all look their best, right? So you have doubt when you're on stage posing or any of these things. You got to go to the show and you see how it is on stage when you're all posing against each other. Like even on stage, as confident as I looked, I was still fighting doubt. Like, man, I wonder how they look next to me. Or man, I wonder if they're hitting this pose a little bit better. Man, I wonder if the judges even like that I'm doing this way or whatever it may be. And it was the same way leading up to the show. It's very mentally, it got very up and down a little bit. Some days I woke up and felt like Hercules and I felt like I looked awesome. And then that can change in minutes, seconds, hours, middle of the day. I feel like I don't look good enough. What am I even doing this for? Because I did this prep during the holidays.
Yep.
So there was times where, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's Eve, my birthday, Halloween, all these different things that I was in prep for, where I see everybody having fun and eating the good food that I want to eat and all these different things. And you question, like, why am I even doing this? What am I doing the show for? I'm not getting paid to do this.
Right.
Like, it's almost like I'm a masochist. Like I'm doing this to punish myself. Right. But yeah, there was constant doubt, what's the point of this? Is this even going to make me feel the way I want it to make me feel or expect to feel after this? Am I doing all this for nothing because I could show up and look horrible? Like there's a lot of that. So I'm super thankful for people in my circle who kind of talked me off the ledge. I had multiple mental breakdowns, lots of tears during prep. So whether it was, Art, my coach, or any of the guys at Shark Sports, Gabe, Mike, any of those guys are awesome whenever I needed to vent. Ashley, my parents, all these different people were able to help kind of talk me off the ledge a little bit, which was really nice. But yeah, it's constant doubt still to this day.
Yeah, you mentioned Art, Shark Sports. Those are good people over there.
Yeah,
they coach winners, man.
They do.
They coach winners.
They don't put anybody on stage who wouldn't be ready. So I would constantly ask him, "Hey, are you sure I'm gonna look good enough? Hey, are you sure I'm stage ready? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" He's like, "I wouldn't put you on stage if I didn't think you were ready to compete." So having that reassurance from someone who's been so successful at it and has such a resume of winning really meant a lot. And you just gotta, whoever your coach is, you have to trust him. And I trust Art with everything as far as that goes. You know what I mean? Like he wouldn't lie to me, and it's his reputation as well if he puts me on stage and I look like shit. So I know he wouldn't do that to me or to himself or his brand or their legacy at Shark Sports.
What I heard you mention, the thoughts that were creeping in your head when you were on stage posing. What's the craziest thing you said to yourself in your head when you were on stage posing? Like, I want the craziest thing.
I don't know. I think there was a couple of times. I don't know if on stage is a little bit different because there's a little bit of doubt and you're wondering what the judges are looking at. And you're so focused on holding your poses and all these different things. I think most of the crazy thoughts come backstage. Like, there's sometimes where I told me, like, you look like shit. These guys are going to kill you. I was lining up with all the other competitors during tanning and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, you look the worst out of everybody here. Like, good fucking job. Good luck out there. And part of me has always kind of had very negative self-talk, which is not great. But part of my negative self-talk pushes me to work a little bit harder. So it's finding that balance, right?
Right.
If I tell myself, hey, you look like shit compared to all these other guys, then it pushes me to pose harder and work a little bit harder on stage. So I try to balance that out so it's not all negative. But there was times backstage where I'm like, I'm going to get killed out there.
What do you tell yourself in those moments where you have the negative self-talk? How do you flip that? How do you alter that? How do you get out of that?
Time. After a little bit of time passes, I kind of calm down a little bit and be like, okay, that was probably a little dramatic. or I just try to flip to a lot of my negative self-talk is very negative. So I'll try to remind myself of something very positive, you know? Um, like, so if I was backstage looking at one of the guys and I'm like, man, you know, his back is crazy. He's going to kill you when you guys do your back and bi pose. His biggest traps, he worked way harder than you did on the back. And then I'll be like, but remember, you got the best legs back here right now. You got your hamstrings pop more than anything else.
Right.
Lean into what makes you proud and confident.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's for every negative thought you had is trying to balance that out with something extremely positive about yourself. And it may not flip you all the way into a great mood, but it puts you back in neutral, which I think is where you need to compete at, in a very neutral space, very stoic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. You look how you look, go out there, you brought the best package you could. There's nothing else you could have done. So let the results be what they are.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, that's great information to have for people who deal with the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Because I think the majority of us do deal with that, whether it's in bodybuilding or how you react in a relationship or how you're showing up at work or whatever it may be, something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Which means you care about it, and it's easy to fall into that.
Yeah, and even if it's not something you're passionate, it could be any regular day stuff. If you're at work and you mess up something at work really, really bad and you beat yourself up for it, like, man, I am the worst at this job. I really suck at this job, and you're really beating yourself up and you get real negative, flip it to anything really positive. Man, I really suck at this job, but hey, I am the best son to my mother and I take care of her and I know she appreciates how I feel about her. Reminding yourself of something that you're really great at can kind of even you out a little bit. So even if it's not something you're passionate about, just regular day life,
Yeah, I think that's important, or just finding some gratitude.
Yeah.
Right? Like automatically, like whenever I'm feeling upset about something or off, I'll try to find gratitude as quick as I can, because it'll bring you back to center.
It's like a life raft.
Like a life raft.
Yeah.
Right? You can float on that thing for a while.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's talk about prep. What was the hardest day for you in prep? I want you to talk me through that moment. What was that like?
I think there was a couple of them. Most of them probably came in the last like month and a half or so. I don't know if there's a few days where I got really, really low. Christmas Eve was really hard. I spent Christmas Eve with my dad and I was just kind of fed up of going through all these holidays and work parties and not being able to enjoy anything the way I wanted to. My dad made prime rib and all these potatoes, and him and my family are drinking wine and bourbon and having a good time. And you feel like you can't kind of participate the same way, right? You kind of, I'm sitting there with my ground beef and green beans and it just doesn't feel the same. Like that's just mental though. Cause I'm still there with my family. I'm still enjoying food. No, not enjoying, but I was eating food. But you almost feel like left out a little bit. It feels a little bit lonely. So that day was really, really hard for me, where I think on Christmas, I probably texted my coach and be like, hey, I'm having a rough one today. Like, what do you got for me? Like, I need some kind of talk, like, to get through this. And then there was a couple days, the last month of prep where I was just getting my steps in when I didn't want to. My body felt tired. I was struggling at work just to get through the day. And I just, it's almost when you get that depleted, you can't almost control your emotions the same way. Your whole system's kind of off. You don't feel right mentally, brain fog, all these things, and you feel like you can't control your emotions. So I would just break down crying. Like, why am I even doing this to myself? Like, there's days where I told myself, I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? And ultimately I did want to do it. That's why I started. But that doubt and that, that struggle can be a little bit louder than your reasoning sometimes. So it's like, man, I don't want this. I'm sick of this fucking diet. I am just tired of getting these steps in. I'm tired of comments from people about how skinny I look or things like that. Like, I'm tired of missing out on all the fun stuff. And yeah, there's probably three or four real big mental breakdowns that all kind of look like that in the last month or so, where I just needed to be talked off a ledge, where I was just telling myself, I'd rather give up. I know I'm this close, but I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I heard it's interesting to deal with the mental battle or the war that's going on with inside of yourself, and then you have people coming to you saying, "You look so skinny." I'm sure. I mean, you're like, I'm already. Everything in life right now already feels 3,000 pounds, and then to have someone come and tell you, "Oh man, you look so skinny," when I didn't even ask for your input,
Yeah. It's not,
right?
it's you look so skinny, or man, I can't wait for you to be able to eat, or you look like you need some food in you, or whatever it may be, whatever and they're harmless. Like when people are saying these things like that, they're joking around and harmless because they want to, whatever, make conversation about it. And bodybuilding is a very irregular thing. So it may make people feel uncomfortable and they want to have a way to talk to you about it. So food is the way to go, or, you look so skinny or whatever. But when you're dealing with all the mental stuff on top of it, like when you're at your breaking point, physically and mentally, hearing, hey, you look so skinny, or hey, why not just have one bite or something like that, feels like a kick to the shin. Like it's like, that's not what I needed right now.
So you heard a ton of, I'm sure you heard a ton of input from people, whether it was warranted or not warranted. Sure, a ton of things that weren't helpful in the moment for you.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you wish someone would have told you while you were competing that you didn't hear?
I think the people closest to me told me everything I needed to hear, but I wish I would have listened, because they were saying the right things, like, hey, just got to get through this, you can do it, you've done it before, all these different things, but I wasn't listening to them because it was hard and I was being sensitive about it, right? And I also wish I would have told myself that it's going to be worth it, because there's a lot of days where I forgot that, and I almost forgot why I was doing it in the first place, because I was so beat up physically or whatever it was, or I was hungry. I wish I would have told myself it's going to be worth it in the end, because when I got there, it was. Matter of fact, the night before the show, I was laying in the hotel bed, just kind of reflecting on the journey. I couldn't sleep anyway. So I recorded a video to myself, and it's like a minute and a half long, and it's me talking to myself. And I pretty much just said, hey, Eric, this is for you to listen to after the show tomorrow. If you win, awesome, man, you did it. Like, congrats. Like, we pulled it off. We got to the end of this. It was worth it. Like, all that hard work wasn't for nothing. Like, I'm super proud of the person you are today because of what you've been through. And if we lost, who cares? Because look at the habits and the person you've become by doing this. You are a better person because of this. And even though you don't have the first place medal around your neck, it was still worth it because of the man that you are today. And as soon as I got off stage, I listened to the video. I'm a little emotional. I'm getting emotional now thinking about it. But it was really fresh to hear, because, I've been two very different mindsets the night before the show and then stepping off the stage. So coming back to that neutral and hearing myself talk about, hey, if we win, and hey, if we don't, you're still a better man because of everything we've been through, and it was worth it. And I wish more often during prep, I would have reminded myself that it's going to be worth it, because it would have made it a little bit easier for me.
That's awesome that you did that. That'll be a cool video.
Yeah, I'll post it one day.
Yeah, you should. You should. I heard you mention that you wish people told you things and you would have wished you listened to some of them. Is there something that you can think about or remember, that there's one thing that sticks out to you that I wish I would have listened to that?
Not specifically, but like the first time I went through my prep, it was new to everybody, my family and everything. They didn't understand how strict I had to be. They didn't understand what it took to get that lean and get on stage. So it was a lot of jokes and kind of stuff that we talked about before for family, and they couldn't wait for me to be done with prep. This time around, they knew what I was going through in life, and they knew what it was going to take for me to get on stage. And so they were much more supportive this time. And they were constantly reassuring me that, hey, as soon as you're done with prep, you're going to feel so much better. Like, we're so proud of you, all these different things. And I just, I didn't take it in and feel it the way I should have. Because those words of positive affirmation can carry you. Like, they really can.
100%.
And I didn't allow them to. So I kind of made prep harder on myself by not trusting the people in my circle to remind me of how incredible what I was doing was, or how special it was. And, reminded me to just enjoy how I feel now, because it makes you appreciate when you're not in prep more. All these different things. I didn't listen. Didn't want to hear anybody say anything about prep, because it was already hard enough for me to deal. So anything added on, I almost took in a negative way, when a lot of it was positive. But it just felt like, I'm tired of hearing about prep. Like, I know I'm going through it. Like, just let me get through this by myself.
How did prep affect your relationships?
Um,
Because you mentioned the emotional piece, right? And how you
yeah,
weren't able to control it at times.
yeah. It was, it makes things a lot more difficult. And, in our job, like, there's lots of lunches and get-togethers and stuff like that. I couldn't really attend those the way I wanted to. Family events, or even like just normal parties for birthdays and stuff, I almost tried to stay away from, so I didn't get that time with my family, which made me feel a little bit more separated from them and a little bit more lonely, because a lot of prep is just controlling your environment and putting yourself in situations where you can be disciplined. And sometimes, especially the deeper I get into prep, I know if I go to this birthday party, I'm going to want a piece of cake or chips or whatever it is. So it's easier just to not go. There was a lot of, events for my sisters that I missed, because I didn't have the energy to go. So I missed out on some of that stuff, which makes all of this feel a lot more lonely. Me and my mom were doing lunches every Friday just to kind of catch up, wellness checks, that's our mother-son time or whatever. And once I started prep, I couldn't really do that anymore. So that sucked, right? Because I felt like that was the thing me and my mom had. And we didn't get to do that anymore, especially the deeper I got into it. Like, she came over to the house a couple of times and I ate my meal prep. But at a certain point, you almost don't have any energy to give to anybody else for anything. So you just don't want to be around anybody. Yeah, so it just, I don't think anyone took it personally, but it made me feel a lot more lonely.
Yeah. Speaking of that, is how how lonely did you feel at times? Because it sounds like there's a lot of self
Yeah.
isolation that's incorporated into prep. So talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, you only isolate as much as you want to. I mean, I could have done more things and gone to more parties and did all that, but I I just don't think I would have been as disciplined, or it would have been really hard, and I would have been not a fun person to be around, right? Because I'm grumpy and depleted or whatever. So you kind of force yourself into a lot of isolation, especially the more so it goes into. Like, my birthday was 10 days before my show, and I didn't see anybody or do anything because couldn't, and I didn't want to be around anybody. My mom and my sisters and my grandmother stopped by, and dropped off some gifts, and that was about it. It was a very lonely birthday. Um, any events I did go to, I left early so I could be home and kind of sleep and do whatever. Um, I was in the office less, so I wasn't around people as much. So it's lonely, and it gets increasingly lonely. And the hard part about it is, I thank God for my coach, because there's only so many people you can talk about this to, because
So so many people understand.
there's 1% of people on earth who have ever done or tried a bodybuilding competition. So I can vent to someone, but I know they don't really know, because you don't know unless you go through it, how
Right.
hard it is.
Right.
So your resources of people you can vent to are smaller as well. So I think in all aspects, it just becomes more and more and more lonely. That's why at the show, I probably had the biggest crowd at the show of people
Oh,
and
hands down,
supporters.
for sure.
And to see how many people still supported me after I was pretty much isolating for 4 months was overwhelming. Like, that was the coolest feeling ever. So, yeah, it can be an extremely lonely sport, for sure.
So let's talk about after the win. The lights are off. All you're competing, right? Everything you've done up to this point, you're done now.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Um, a little bit of celebration, right? It feels good. Especially it feels better when you win. Like, so you do a little celebrating. I had the Super Bowl the day after the show. So that whole weekend I kind of, ate like not great.
What was the not to cut you off,
Yeah, no, you're
because I want you to finish that, but what was the first thing you ate after the
crumble cookie.
crumble cookie?
About 4 of them.
Killed them.
Killed him. Killed him over like a 12-hour period. I killed him. And then my friend Charisma made me some homemade bread. some cinnamon swirl, and some cheddar jalapeno sourdough, smacking it down in the car on the way back to the hotel. And then I had a steak and a beer, and it was fabulous. Heaven.
But I didn't want to cut you off. So what happens?
Yeah, so after kind of a weekend of celebrating, you're supposed to get into, like, everyone exits the show differently. My coach is pretty detailed about how he wants to do it, because coming out of a bodybuilding show, your body can hold a lot of fat. You have a lot of cravings. There's a lot of binge eating sometimes if you're not strict about it, and you can put on weight really quick. I remember after my first show, I was talking to one of the athletes like a week after the show, and he had put on 20 pounds in a week.
Wow.
Because he was eating like garbage, fulfilling all his cravings. During the 4, 5, 6, 7 months of prep, you're telling yourself, man, I can't wait to be done so I can have this. And then when you're done with the show, you can do whatever you want, but you almost still have to be disciplined, because it can be tough on the body. Your body's holding fat a lot quicker in water. You have all this extra glycogen in you, and there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it. So exiting the show is almost harder than going into it, because you still have to be pretty strict about your diet if you want to do it right, but there's no end goal in sight. It's really just being strict on your diet for a few weeks to kind of reset your metabolism, get your body back to normal, and slowly increase your calories. But it's really hard after being so strict for 5 months to still be strict when you know there's no goal coming up or anything like that. So I've actually it's been a very hard week. This week of exiting was much harder than the first one, because I dug deeper in the show to get leaner, had more cravings, and it's been very tough to kind of control my hunger, because I feel like I can't be satisfied. Like, everything I put in my body doesn't fill me up. I never feel full, and my body's almost working like a furnace right now. So it's the mental battle of coming out is almost harder than coming in if you want to do it right. Yeah.
And I've heard about this and read about it. Have you experienced like post-show emotional crash?
Oh yeah, post-show blues.
What is that? What does that look like?
You know what I compare it to? You'll relate to this too, because you did music as well. But like, when I was doing music and we would have a show at the Rialto, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do a sold out show at the Rialto. Everyone's singing your songs with you.
You're him.
Yeah, you're him. You're signing autographs after. People are taking pictures with you.
Yep.
They don't know you live in the same town as them. They just think you're an artist, right? They just see you as the man. And then the next day, I would wake up and go clock in at Applebee's and get yelled at by tables because I didn't bring extra ranch. And it's like, you get to the top of the roller coaster and it's an immediate drop. You know, you don't feel like the man anymore. Now, you know, all that rehearsal and all that practice and all that prep, you did it. It was awesome. And now what? So it's, you know, it's hard to go from feeling like you're on top of the world to just, I don't want to say regular, but just nothing the next day.
Right.
There is no crowd the next morning. You know, there is no goal in sight that you can keep working for. So it's very hard emotionally. It's very up and down. Like I said earlier, you know, the mental battle of bodybuilding is a lot tougher, I think, than the physical is. And that's part of it too, is how you exit the show, because the dieting is harder mentally, because when you don't have a goal in front of you, it's harder to be more regimented. At least it is for me.
Well, yeah, more disciplined.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if I eat this, when you're on in prep, you're like, hey, if I eat this, I'm gonna look like shit on stage. Now, when you're like, hey, if I eat this, there's really no repercussion. I mean, there is a repercussion, right, as far as what happens to your body, metabolism.
But
right?
My coach can't say anything to me.
Right.
Like, I don't have to do my check-ins. I don't.
Right.
There's no structure.
More of an honor system to yourself.
Yeah, and that can be hard. But yeah, so I think mentally, you know, this time mentally, I still feel really good about it, and I'm really proud of what I did. And, you know, I walk around feeling like the man because I can say I'm a professional and all these different things. Yeah. But it's still hard when I'm home alone. And I don't have that goal, and I don't feel like I have anything, even like content wise. Like, for 4 months, I've been posting about the show, and people have been so excited for me. Now it's like, okay, what do I talk about now? Like, things like that.
We get ready for the next one.
2026.
Are you going to compete again?
You know, it's funny. After the last show, I said I'd never compete again, especially when I was in prep, because it sucks. And then this show, I was like, you know, if I win, I'm done. I just want to say I won, and now I'm good. But now that I got my pro card, I may. If I do, it'll be in 2026.
Okay.
I take the year to enjoy myself, travel a little bit, eat some good food, put on some size, And then maybe I'm thinking about making my pro debut in 2026.
Sweet.
So we'll see.
I look forward to it, man.
I appreciate it.
I'll be there wherever it's at.
I already know.
All right. So I wanna transition into our our question that we ask every guest that comes on, and it's about a time in your life when you just ran out of space. You were just feeling so tight in the situation that you didn't know what to do, how you're going to make it out. Can you share a time of your life where you feel like you ran out of wiggle room?
Yeah, I'd say after my last breakup last year, which is actually why I started. That was part of the reason, I was going through this journey, and that's why I did the bodybuilding competition in the first place, because I felt like I had no control. I was someone who, since I was, 14, anytime I've been in a relationship, I have always jumped from one relationship to the next, right? So I haven't stayed single very long. I always had something lined up or had my eye on someone or knew who I was going to be with after this one ended. And that's just kind of always how I've been. It's never a problem I've addressed or anything like that. Now I'm starting to realize that it's because I didn't want to deal with the emotions of a breakup, right? I didn't want to address who I am. I didn't want to address my faults in what happened or anything like that. So after this most recent breakup, I didn't have that. I didn't have anything I could just jump to and distract myself with. I didn't have anybody I could pour myself into, so I didn't have to sit with the person I was and really reflect on it. So after this most recent breakup, and like I said, I've always known when the end of a relationship is coming, or I could feel it, or I could initiate it, or whatever it was. I didn't have that this time. And it wasn't part of my plan, right? More or less to say, which makes me sound evil, but it wasn't part of my plan. So I was kind of just sitting there, and I realized that I need to figure out what's going on, because a lot of it's like, when they talk about the Midas touch, right? Everything you touch turns to gold, right? You have the Midas touch. Which is pretty much just saying, no matter what you do, you get the same results every time. So if everything you touch turns to gold, you have the Midas touch. But if every relationship you're in ends the same way, you're probably the problem. It's kind of the same idea, right?
Yep.
Everything, no matter what you do, it always ends the same way. It's like the negative version of the Midas touch. And since I didn't have anything to distract myself, I kind of came to that realization. So I thought, I need to get to the bottom of what's going on here. So I started therapy, and because I felt like I had nowhere else to go. Like, I'm sitting here, I have never sat with myself or my emotions or anything before. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I do the things I do. I don't know how I'm in this position. I don't know how none of this went according to my plan. I didn't have control of anything. I felt like everything was completely everything was happening to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the victim mentality.
Yeah.
Victim mentality.
Yeah. Not that I didn't think I was a bad person. I just felt like I should be able to control this, and I can't. It's happening to me, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
And so I really had to, I felt like I had nowhere else to go. Shia LaBeouf has a great quote where he says, rock bottom isn't the worst moment of your life. It's when you decide to change.
Yep.
And this was my rock bottom. And so I had to really think about it. And, one of the first things my therapist asked me was, how have your secrets kept you sick?
I love that question. That's something we should, a lot of people should ask themselves. So like marinate on that, because that's a really beautiful, tough question.
Yeah. It's one of the first questions she asked me too. And I really had to think about it, because that's a scary question to ask. Right?
Yeah.
So when I did my reflecting on this, I realized that in every relationship I was in, I would jump to the next, and I would bring my baggage with me to the next one, because I never unpacked it.
Right.
Right. So each time I do this, I'm bringing a little bit more baggage, and I'm bringing the same bad habits that I have, you know, um, just with more baggage, and the next person has to deal with it. And it was never easy for any of my exes because I wasn't, each time I was probably more progressively more difficult to deal with because I have more baggage and I have, you know, more negative habits. And there's times where, I've been condescending. There's times where I've been unfaithful. There's times where, a lot of the time in all my relationships, I would love people how I thought I should love them and not how they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how you build a successful relationship, right? People need to be loved the way they need to be loved, not the way you think they deserve to be loved. So I'm stacking these bad habits, and I'm stacking this path of wreckage behind me and just carrying it on to the next one. And, it's the same result every time. It's like I'm living in Groundhog Day. And so while I'm continuously stacking all these negative things and hurting people and doing all these different things that only the people I'm in a relationship with have to deal with, everyone on the outside sees all my vanity accomplishments, right? Good at coaching football, bodybuilding, successful at work, whatever it is. And I'm constantly being told how good of a person I am or how great they think I am. So everyone's telling me how good I am, but I know when the door's closed, I'm not a great person because of how I've treated people and how I haven't dealt with anything in my life. And that made me realize why, although I seem very confident, my self-worth was so fucking low. Because people were telling me how great I am, and I was reminding myself constantly of how I'm not. It's not like I wasn't aware of the ways I was hurting people. I just wasn't aware enough to do anything about it because I didn't have to deal with it. I would, break someone's heart or something like that and then jump into the next relationship so I don't have to think about how I hurt them or how they're feeling about it or what they're going through or how their healing journey looks. I would even talk about it in music. My ex was upset because I didn't show her off enough on, Instagram or out in public or whatever. This is a couple exes ago. This is not the most recent one. But I came out with a song called Stupid where I talked about all the ways I was stupid in the relationship. And one of probably my favorite line I've ever written was, how come you just always treat these women like your muse, but you never show them off? It's like you're painting, but you never have an art show. And it's a great line. Everyone thinks the music sounds great, and I'm very aware of what I'm doing, but I'm not doing anything to fix it. I just said it in a song and never made any changes in my habits. So I'm continuously bringing these negative habits with me. And my last relationship, it just came to a point where, things ended suddenly. I didn't have anywhere to go. So that's when I started seeing my therapist and kind of digging things out. And when she asked, how have your secrets kept you sick? It's because I felt like I was living two lives or a lie or whatever it was. I had built this relationship. We had built this relationship off attachment and not connection. And so I didn't handle any of it the right way. So now, not only am I mourning this relationship and this life I thought I was going to have with this incredible person, because she's an incredible person. But since I'm unpacking this now, I'm also unpacking the last 5 relationships where I did the same thing and the people I hurt. And that's a lot to unpack all at once. If I would have done it the right way, I could have been a better person each relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it the opposite. So I almost was worse each relationship because I knew what the plan was. I knew what the exit strategy was or whatever it was. And I didn't have that this time. So it threw me off balance. It threw me through a loop. I started therapy because I felt like I didn't have anywhere to go. Got closer to God because I felt like it was too heavy for me to carry by myself. And then I leaned into bodybuilding to have a life raft to kind of guide myself out of it. So I think the ending of my last relationship where I didn't have a plan. I didn't have any wiggle room. There was nowhere for me to go. And the only way I was never going to feel like this again, because I don't ever want to feel like the way I felt. I don't ever want to hurt people the way I've hurt people before. And I don't ever want to, leave things unresolved or make someone feel less than they should feel or whatever it is. I don't ever want to make people feel like that again. And so the only reason this was ever going to change is if I change, because nothing changes unless you do. So that was kind of my no wiggle room moment. And these last 8 months have been constantly stacking days where I work to be the man I know I can be. Because a lot of my exes stayed with me because they saw the potential in who I could be. It's the same thing people on the outside see who aren't in relationships with me. They just see all the great things I could be or I'm doing or whatever. I do community service. I work with kids. All these different things sound great. But if you're not bringing those same values into the relationships with people you love and you care about and you're trying to build things with, then it's all for naught, because it's almost like you're living two different lives.
Man, that's a lot. It's a lot.
Sorry, I know.
No. You're great. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the vulnerability. Man, one of the things I love that you said in there is how your secrets, ask yourself how your secrets have kept you sick. What, I guess, you don't have to share, but like, what secrets did you find out about yourself that you think did keep you sick?
I think and this isn't just in my my romantic relationships, but this was also stacking up in my relationships with family and friends too. Not being the best man I could to anybody in my life, but wanting to look like I was the best man in public or on the internet or whatever it was. That need for validation made me feel like I was living two different lives. And so I would, lie to family and friends and romantic partners. And I would, I think it was, times I had lied to people, times I had not cared about other people's feelings in the actions that I was doing. It was times where I, even little things, like times where I would dread going to hang out with family or friends or whatever it was. I was doing it because I felt like I had to, but I was so selfish and wanted to be by myself, even though these people just wanted to be around me. I made every excuse not to see other people because I don't know if I felt like I was too good or it is whatever, just being selfish. So I think all the selfish habits I stacked, and then realizing that, hey, I know I'm stacking these bad things, but when I go out in public, I got to turn it on and act like, I'm the mayor and I'm the best thing that you've seen. And
Right.
I'm such a good man and yada, yada, yada. That constant conflict of interest in your heart and your head can drive you crazy. And I think it drove my self-worth so low that I almost had to turn on the need for self-validation higher, because I'm starting to love myself less. So I need to get it from somewhere else. So I need more validation from outside people who don't matter or who don't care. So I think it's like that gap is going bigger and bigger, the need for self-validation and the self-hate. So I think it made me a person that I was not proud to be for a long time.
So you felt like you needed to almost be someone else of more of who you weren't.
Yeah.
To fill that gap.
I needed to be
more manipulation.
Yeah.
Be more this, more lying, more that. Really,
Yeah.
To really get that from the outside because
I couldn't get it from myself
on the inside.
Yeah, 100%.
How have you changed that, or what have you started to do to move the needle?
It's taken a long time. It's taken a lot of therapy. I see my dog Carrie once a week. Shout out to Carrie. I don't know if she'll ever see this, but I appreciate her. She's incredible. And it's taken a lot of practice in how I talk to myself. That's been my biggest thing. The more, because I talk to myself very negatively, and I have for a long time because of this constant battle of me not loving myself, right?
Right.
Because I know that, in my past I have manipulation or lying or whatever, and the whole battle that we just talked about. So the one thing we've been practicing the most is when I talk to myself more positively, I feel more self-love. And that increase in self-love decreases the need for outside validation. Which has been impactful. So it took a long time. I still struggle with it daily. That's why I still go to therapy once a week instead of bi-weekly, because I still have moments where it's tough. But, it's taken me writing down the things I love about myself and the person I want to be and taping it up on my mirror so I see it every morning. And just as a reminder, um, a lot of it was me having to learn how to forgive myself, because who I am is not who I was. And you can make that change at any time. You just have to decide that it's worth it and really, really go after it. You can wake up any day and decide you want to be a different person. I woke up and decided I want to be a bodybuilder one day. It's the same thing. You can do the same thing emotionally and mentally as well. So I think one, it's learning how to forgive myself, because I spent a lot of time beating myself up, as I still feel like Carrie would hate that I say this. I still feel like I should sometimes, and I did really bad, and I got in a really bad place mentally and emotionally. There was a lot of days where I didn't think I was going to see the next day because I was beating myself up so bad. And so learning how to forgive myself and understanding that the only way to get past it is to become the person that I want to be, or that I know I can be, and a person that I'm proud to wake up every day. Bodybuilding helped me with that, because the discipline that it took, leaning into my family and friends more helped with that a lot. And self-love, forgiving yourself, and accepting that you can't change how you made people feel. You can only change how they, how they feel about you and the person you are going forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things to accept, is that you can't change how people feel about you, especially if you've hurt them,
Yeah.
right? And learning how to find the acceptance. How have you found acceptance in learning that you can't change how people feel about you, regardless of who you were and who you're becoming?
I don't, honestly, this is going to sound so cliche, but I think the only thing that can do it is time, because there's still a lot of days where I struggle with that too. This, we talked about it at the beginning. It's not a linear journey. So I have good days where I feel like I know I'm a better man than I was, and I know every day I become a little bit better of a man. But there's days where I still feel like, man, I can't believe I hurt this person or this person, or can't believe I did this or this or this or whatever it may be. And I still beat myself up some days. But I think the only way to get through it is to start putting all the things into practice. So constantly being honest with people, even when it's uncomfortable, and having tough conversations. A lot of the times I would rather lie than have a tough conversation, right? That's just how I was for a long time. So now forcing myself to have those uncomfortable conversations with friends or family or loved ones or whatever it is, stacking small things like that gets you closer to for me to be the man I want to be. Constantly, I still do my daily affirmations even when I don't feel like it, because I know it's going to help.
Yep.
It's just the same way, like there's days where I didn't want to get my meals in or get my steps in, and I did it because I know stacking the habits works. So doing my affirmations when I don't want to, reading these books and listening to these people when I would rather be watching Netflix or something like that. Making sure I'm putting good foods in my body. If I know that drinking Jack and Cokes is going to get me emotional or kind of make me spiral, then hey, I can't drink Jack and Coke anymore. It's a lot of that is just controlling your environment, keeping people around you who are going to continuously uplift you in a positive way, and leaning into your circle helps a lot too. I spent more time with, probably my sisters when I was going through a lot of that than I had in years, because they made me feel so happy. And like the lunches with my mom, we didn't start that till after my breakup, and I started going through everything and needed somebody. And it made me appreciate, my mom and the time I get with her so much more. So I think leaning into your people, and doing the daily habits is really what has made a difference for me. And now I feel a lot more comfortable having uncomfortable, honest conversations with people. And, I don't dread going to spend time with my friends and family or whatever it is, because I know what it's like to not have them or feel alone or things like that. And so I lean into that as well. I think it's just stacking every day and trying to be a little bit better than the next,
What's the biggest thing you learned about yourself through your no wiggle room moment?
that I'm not as, I don't, I don't love myself like I thought I did.
Mm.
And I think we kind of talked about it earlier, but I've always felt like an underdog, right? Undersized, whatever it is in life, whether it's sports, school, work, I've always felt like I was kind of an underdog. So I had to create this false sense of confidence and self-love in my head to make me feel like I could be the best at anything or do anything. So I've had this false sense of arrogance and confidence for years. And that's how I navigated my life. That's why I was able to jump from relationship to relationship without caring about anybody else, because I had this arrogance about me that who cares, right? I'm looking out for me because all I got is me and yada, yada, yada. Then when everything is stripped away and it's just you and you don't have a distraction and you don't have anything else, you realize, wow, I don't love myself. I don't even like who I am, let alone love who I am. And so I had to really teach myself. It's one of the reasons I write down my affirmations of the man I want to be or the person I want to be. Like, I want to be someone who can win a pro card. I'm shifting that now to all the habits to do daily to become the man I want to be and the father I want to be one day and the son I want to be and the brother and the friend and all these different things, because I didn't love who I was. I didn't love who I had built myself to be. I was successful in a lot of areas, sure, but I hated who I was. And I didn't realize that till it all got ripped away and everything. There was nothing else there but me and me. So I think I learned I just didn't love myself like I thought I did.
Hard self-reflection. Hard self.
Been the hardest 8 months of my life.
Yeah. Looking in the mirror is very tough, and it's going to show us a lot of things that we don't necessarily like about ourselves.
Yeah.
But thank you for your courage and thank you for your strength, man.
I appreciate you asking.
Yeah. There's a couple more questions I wanna ask you. Obviously, being in the gym, there's a ton of ego. Everyone thinks they're the strongest, right?
Sure.
Or wants to look the strongest. Bench 500, bench 3, or squat 500, bench 300, whatever. What is strength mean to? What does real strength mean to you?
I think strength means doing the things you don't want to do to become the person you want to be. So if the person you want to be is strong, it's going to lift when you don't want to. If the person you want to be is successful, it's making the sales calls when you don't want to. If the person you want to be is a good partner, it's having the uncomfortable conversations when you don't want to. I think it takes real strength to do things that make you immediately uncomfortable that will benefit you long term. The real strength is all mental.
Facts.
It's all mental. The physical is fine too, but strength is doing the things you don't want to do, but knowing that you need to do them to be the person that you want to be.
Love it.
Yeah.
If you could pass on one piece of wisdom to the world about yourself and your life and your work that you would want people to remember, what would that be?
It's funny because I spent so much time in my life feeling like I wasn't a good man. I want people to remember me as a good man. So that's how I plan on living my life. But if there's a piece of wisdom in anything that anybody could learn from me, I think it's that people oftentimes, overestimate the problem and underestimate their ability to deal with it. So I don't think anything's ever as hard as it is. So you overestimate the problem, right? Something's going on, you have to have a tough conversation, but you don't feel like you can. And so you just don't have it. And too many of those adds up to something bad when it could have just been solved with a conversation at the beginning. So I think no problem is as bad as you think it is, and you are more than capable to solve whatever it is that you're going through.
All right, man. That's it.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for being on the Wiggle Room.
Of course. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. I'm proud of you. I love you. And I know you're going to keep doing great things.
Yes, sir.
All right, man.
All right.
We'll see y'all soon.
Bye, guys.